Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is the Not So Serious Keto video podcast. I don't know where I'm going to go today, exactly. I've got a few ideas, but I could see myself maybe, especially in the second half of this, kind of going a little bit off script. What I'd like to start off with, though, is a little Thanksgiving recap, but actually even a little bit before Thanksgiving, because the day or maybe it was 2 days before Thanksgiving, I got a text from a friend and former coworker by the name of Ben. And Ben said, so 2 years ago this week, we met at Asiana, it's a Asian fusion restaurant, and your head was bright red and twice the size that it is now. The next time I saw him was probably 6 months later, so I had gone through my little 8-week phase of doing the Penn Jillette potato presto diet thing that I didn't enjoy at all, and then had moved on into keto, which I enjoy quite a bit. And seeing the look on someone's face when they haven't seen you in several months after going keto is absolutely priceless. We had a great conversation about, how I had gone keto and he had actually gone vegan, which I'll forgive him for. But he had told me at the time that after he went home, after having lunch with me, he told his wife that he didn't think I was probably going to live a lot longer. And he was probably right. I was in some pretty bad shape 2 years ago Thanksgiving. I weighed 230 pounds. I was on all kinds of medication for blood pressure and acid reflux. I was enormously depressed. I was suffering from all different kinds of inflammation. And it had just been an overall pretty horrible year, personally, professionally, and financially for me. So Ben caught me at pretty much my lowest point. And if you watch my transformation series of videos, you know that it was that Thanksgiving weekend that I kind of had my nervous breakdown, hit rock bottom, and then epiphany that I needed to get my life squared away. And I kind of think I have. So far, so good. Now, traditionally, Thanksgiving at our house means I'm cooking an elaborate meal for 20 or more people. But in one of the rare positive aspects of COVID, we were actually able to keep the size down. We only had 10 people in total. And I also got the wife and Courtney to agree that I was not going to do anything super elaborate. I smoked a full bone-in turkey breast, which turned out very nicely. Everyone really liked that. But even better was I made a couple of rotisserie chickens on the grill. One was garlic herb and the other was Cajun. And I think what made these so spectacular is this brine that I made. Unfortunately, I just sort of made it by gut feel. So next time I do chickens, I'm definitely going to write down what I did for the brine so that I can share it with you in a video. One of the things that I had been debating prior to Thanksgiving was, am I going to stay keto? Or am I going to break keto? Is it going to be a cheat day? Is it going to be a cheat meal? And I really dislike the word cheat. To me, the word cheat, it means like you're trying to do something unfair to get ahead or to achieve an advantage that you wouldn't normally have. To me, that's cheating. So I wish there were a better word for like cheat day. And I know some of you have shared with me in the past your name for it. So refresh my memory. What's your word for a cheat day or a cheat meal? Put it down in the description. Remind me. So what I did was I had sort of a cheat, I'm using it again. What can I call it? A off-plan. I'll call it off-plan appetizer sort of snack. The meal itself stayed on plan, didn't have any potatoes or rolls or corn or any sort of carby stuff. I just pretty much, it was more or less carnivore and some Brussels sprouts that my daughter made. And you know how I feel about Brussels sprouts. But for a snack, I had 2 beers. I think it's the first time since January when I was on vacation that I've had a beer. And they were Schlafly Pumpkin Ale, which is just a great pumpkin ale. Any of you that are down in the St. Louis sort of neck of the woods, you can vouch for that if you drink pumpkin ale, I guess. So I had 2 pumpkin ales, and then I had some appetizers, some bacon-wrapped scallops, and some stuffed mushrooms, and some cheese. But then I really went to town on these crackers, and it was a smoked trout dip. I think that the dip itself was probably keto, but the crackers definitely weren't. And with my continuous glucose monitor, I was able to see the exact impact of the spike that I caused for myself. So you can see how dramatic the spike was in the screenshot from the Freestyle Libre app, but if we look specifically at the Levels app and target that meal, you can see not only is it a pretty bad score there of 2 out of 10, but I had almost a 50-point spike and I spent 75 minutes in total over 120 for my blood glucose. Now what's great though is you can look back at the Freestyle Libre app and you can see that I bounced right back down and was pretty much business as usual. I didn't knock myself out of ketosis, all good. Now, this is one of the reasons why I'm a big advocate for either a blood glucose and ketone monitor like the Keto Mojo or the Levels system if it's in your budget, and it's not in the budget for probably most people. But rather than the day after a off-plan event, I think in the past I would have felt a probably significant sense of guilt, like what I did was wrong. And I'm not saying that I feel proud that I went off plan, because it would have been easy to stay on plan. I could have made a batch of my keto crackers, either the flax ones or the panhead crackers, and I would have been good to go. My glucose would have been completely normal, relatively flat, all would have been good. Well, who knows with the beer, but still, I probably could have avoided that as well. But I didn't. I made a decision as an adult that I was going to have an off-plan meal. And then by looking at my Keto Mojo and looking at my Levels software, I was really sort of able to put it into perspective and not feel guilty about it. I saw it as a tiny little event. It happened once, and I think I wound up, 2 pounds heavier on the scale the next day. I'm sure just water weight, and that goes away. So if you're curious at all about either the Keto Mojo or the Levels program, I will link to those down in the description below. And that's sort of my Thanksgiving recap. One of the things that I will probably start doing in the podcast are mini reviews. So if there's a product or something that isn't really worthy of a full video, something I can just quickly give you my opinion on, either thumbs up or thumbs down, I'm going to do that in the podcast. And I'm going to do that right now in this podcast. I've been getting a lot of questions lately, both in the comments and people emailing me directly or asking me on Instagram if I'm familiar with the King Arthur Baking, what's it called? It's like keto wheat flour blend. And yes, I am familiar with it. And yes, I have used it. And no, I cannot recommend it. So, this is a bag of it. This is a $13 bag of wheat flour blend, keto wheat flour. Not very big. In fact, it is 454 grams. Now, if you get out onto the King Arthur Baking website, there's a recipe for keto bread, and it requires 420 grams of this, leaving you with just 34 grams. I think that is probably a tablespoon, give or take. So you're going to get 1 loaf of bread out of this bag for $13. So I think just from a price standpoint, it's pretty easy to say no on this. But let's take a look at the ingredients. Vital wheat gluten, wheat protein, King Arthur unbleached flour, which is wheat flour and malted barley flour, wheat fiber, whey, sunflower oil, buttermilk, cellulose gum, natural flavors. So clearly, if you have any sort of wheat or gluten issues, this is not a product for you. And if you're clean keto, you probably saw a lot of red flags as I was reading through that. In terms of actual baking, I tried using this at creating a hot dog bun. Yes, the elusive hot dog bun. And it did not go well. I used a recipe that came from a reliable source for a non-keto hot dog bun, and on the package and on the website for this King Arthur flour, it says use it 1-to-1 as a substitute. So that's what I did. And what I wound up with were 6 bricks. These things were dense, and they didn't taste very good either. Like, I could handle a dense bread, but when it doesn't taste good either, sadly, 5.5 hot dog buns went into the trash. And I almost never throw anything away. So if you've been on the fence about this King Arthur flour, hopefully I provided enough information to help you make up your mind. I'm actually going to do a second little review here, and that is of the movie Sacred Cow. Now, I'm not sure how long this is available for streaming. It is not on Netflix or Amazon Prime or any of the other services that I'm aware of. You need to go to the website directly. I'll link to it down below, and hopefully it's still available. It had said it was going to be available until November 30th, but I don't know if that's just one of those randomly generated dates to make sure that I watched it within a week. But like I said, I'll put the link down below. As far as how good of a movie it is, I thought it was an exceptional movie. It is not specifically a keto movie. And in fact, I don't think they even talk about keto or low carb or anything like that in it. It's really about restorative ranching and farming. One of the main subjects in this is Joel Salatin, who I'm a very, very big fan of. There was a lot about him and his farm, Polyface Farms, and how he works the land, in a very natural way that restores the land and really treats the animals very humanely. What I really enjoyed about this documentary is, besides just the message that we are stewards here on Earth, we have a limited amount of time here, and we owe it to the planet to treat the planet well. And we're clearly not doing that with some of the industrial farming and agriculture. I also really enjoyed that the delivery I felt was very even-handed. It could have really kind of come after vegans, especially, and it doesn't. Certainly there is a lot of footage showing vegans and their demonstrations and some of these things that don't make them look like the most reasonable people. Now, I'm not saying that vegans are bad or that all vegans are bad, but clearly these ones that are doing some of these more insane protests that show like a willingness to do violence to humans while making sure that we don't do any violence to garden slugs just seems a little bit off balance to me. But rather than attack and ridicule vegans, they describe how we have similar goals and that it's not a binary choice, like either we go vegan or we're horrible people that just want to, kill animals and do horrible things to the planet. We can do wonderful things to the planet, and we can treat animals humanely up until the time that we then eat them, because part of the cycle of life is death. Animals eat animals, and we just happen to be the one at the top of the food chain. Now, ultimately, I enjoyed this movie because I agreed with the message. If you don't agree with the message, I don't think it's going to sway you. So I'm not exactly sure who the audience is for this, unless the intent is that when people like you and me watch it, that we'll spread the word, that we'll send it to our congressman or congresswoman, and that maybe they'll start looking at just how silly some of the things that we do in this country are in terms of farming and subsidies that support just treating our land and our animals very poorly. So I will put a link down in the description below for Sacred Cow if you feel that's something you'd like to check out. Now, I've mentioned before in these podcasts my issue with sort of this sudden onset insomnia, where I wake up between 1 and 2 in the morning and then am generally awake till 4 or 5 in the morning. And I have tried everything that any of you have recommended, every supplement, no dice, just not working. But on the bright side, whenever I wake up and my mind starts racing, I make notes in my phone. And some of them make sense the next day, some of them not so much. So I'm just going to kind of look through the phone here and see if anything jumps out that might be a fun topic. So I wrote daikon radish chips. So I thought that I had tried daikon radish in my potato substitutes video, but maybe I didn't try making chips out of them. That would be an interesting thing. I may have to try that pretty soon. Speaking of daikon radish, one of the things that I do want to start getting into is more fermented foods. So like doing some kimchi, sauerkraut, things like that. I know daikon radish is in kimchi. Here's one that's sort of in progress right now. I've already got a little bit of footage on it, but I don't know that it's a super duper exciting video, and I'll have to figure out how to edit it and make it tight. But it's doing yeast tests and brulee torch tests on non-sugar sweeteners to see how they behave. Do any of them activate yeast? Do any of them impede yeast? Do they caramelize? Do they crystallize? If I put them in a solution, do they hold in that solution or do they fall out of solution? Those sort of things. So, future science video. Corn dog story and diet poverty. That's a good topic. Let's talk that for a second. For some people, the objection to keto is that it's too expensive. And I suppose if you're doing a really strict, clean keto where everything is grass-fed and organic and non-GMO and by the book, it is going to be more expensive on a per pound basis. Now, I do think to a certain extent, the fact that you're just more satiated when you're eating good quality proteins and fats, that you're going to eat less, and perhaps that offsets the cost a bit. But I know what it's like to have your diet largely dictated by your income. I spent, it was about 2 years in pretty serious poverty. I mean, I was below the poverty line in terms of income, and it absolutely affected the way that I ate. So brace yourself for this. I would eat, my weekday diet was, I would get a big 30-count bag of corn dogs from Sam's Club. And I would have 2 corn dogs for breakfast, 2 corn dogs for lunch, 2 corn dogs for dinner. Every single weekday, except Friday for dinner. Then I would go to Little Caesars Pizza and I would get the pizza, which is basically, 3 linear feet of pizza, just 2 big pizza squares. And I would get the thick crust so that I was getting as much dough as possible just to fill me up. And I would buy a 12-pack of old-style genuine draft beer. And to call that beer is a bit of a stretch, but that's sort of what I ate. It was Monday through Friday corn dogs. Over the course of the weekend, pizza. I had pizza for breakfast, pizza for lunch, pizza for dinner. And I had my, handful of beers Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday while watching football. Lather, rinse, repeat every week. So my total weekly food budget was maybe $30. That's what I lived on. So I understand how it can be difficult sometimes with keto if you're on a limited income. And I try not to introduce too many new wild ingredients, but certainly as you're stocking up a pantry, if you're doing any sort of keto baking, it can add up. And that's one of the reasons why I try and warn you away from products that I don't think are especially good and are rather expensive. In terms of last week's little Easter egg, it was We Bare Bears. Fun little show that was introduced to me by my son Connor. And speaking of Connor, this will be my final little subject here today. This weekend, he graduated from basic training. So that was pretty exciting. We were able to watch it online. Very proud of my son. On Monday, he begins his advanced individual training, and that will be for the cavalry. He'll be home in 3 weeks for Christmas, which will be really nice. We'll only get him for about 10 days, and then he goes back to training for another, about 10 weeks. But very exciting. He was able to give us a call, FaceTime us. We chatted for about an hour. Pretty neat. I'm pretty excited, and it's going to be a lot of fun having him home in a few weeks. So with that, I am going to wrap up this podcast. As always, thank you for watching or listening.